So that brings us to chapter 24. And chapter 24 deals with storytelling. And when you get to the heart of it, public speaking is really all about storytelling. As speakers, we stand in a long line of storytellers, those individuals who sat around campfires in ancient times and shared the oral history of their people and through stories that they told. And storytelling has always been foundational to society. It's always been the thing upon which we build culture and we build identity. Our stories are how we define ourselves. Our stories are how we define our role in the world. Our stories are how we give character and definition to our groups and communities. And the stories that we tell help us give an understanding to our world and define and shape our view of our world. So stories are very important. When we use them as speakers, we can draw people in and make them a part of our story. As a matter of fact, when you first meet an individual and you get to know each other, and it's a new romantic interest, and you're out with this individual that you're interested in, and as y'all begin to communicate and you get to know each other better, the way that you learn about each other is through the stories that you share. You share stories, and every story reveals something important about your character, some good trait or behavior, or it celebrates some success, or the stories, the way you introduce yourself, the way that you make yourself familiar to the person you're communicating with, or the way they make themselves familiar to you. We learn about each other through stories. So as a public speaker, the art of storytelling is essential to your success. You have to discover your inner storyteller. You have to discover that ability to craft a story, to draw people in. This is how you become a powerful speaker. Section 24.2 contains a chart for self-reflection. And it has a scale, it has a number of items and a scale. And every item on the chart is scored on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 means never and 10 means always. I want you to look at that chart, and I want you to score yourself on the basis of that chart. The score reflects how good you think you are at being a storyteller. Notice I didn't say how good you are. That is not what this chart evaluates. This chart evaluates your self-perception of yourself as a storyteller. The higher your overall score is, the greater skill you believe you have as a storyteller. This is going to kind of tell you where you are and where you need to go. And you need to look at that, you need to evaluate it, and you need to decide, what are your strengths, what are your weaknesses, what are the areas you need to improve on. If you're going to become a better storyteller, then you need to find your voice. You need to come to a place of understanding about what it is about you and your stories that can impact others. Because storytelling relies on authenticity, and your voice is the real you. It has the ring of truth. It has the ring of authenticity to your audience. And that authenticity rises from telling real stories about the real you. Somebody else's stories aren't going to be as authentic coming from you because they're not your stories. And your storyteller, your inner voice, your inner storytelling voice is going to rise from things that you've experienced, things that you think. And this is how, just like we talked about how you build connections with a romantic interest through stories, this is how you build connections to your audience. This is how you establish your authority on a subject. This is how you get them on your side, in your corner, pulling for you. If your goal is to persuade me, then draw me in with a story. Make me feel I'm a part of your story. Get me on board, and then point me in the direction you want me to go. So when we talk about stories and storytelling, we're not just talking about sharing stories that drone on and on and on. Every one of us knows somebody that tells those kind of stories. Once they start, they've got to fill you in on all the background. They've got to give you all the rationale. They've got to give you all the things that are going on. And every now and then they're going to take a side step and take you on a little journey over here about something that doesn't even have anything to do with the story, but they will get back to the story eventually, and they'll get the story told eventually. That's not what I'm talking about when I'm talking about storytelling. I'm talking about stories that make your point, stories that persuade, stories that cause your audience to empathize with you. It's one thing to tell a story, and it's another thing entirely to use a story to make your point for you, to use a story to get your audience involved in what you're talking about. When we talk about storytelling as a public speaker, that's what we're talking about, a story that makes your point. Because storytelling is perhaps the most effective tool of influence that you have at your disposal. When you're able to translate thoughts and ideas into words that others understand and stories that they can get a hold of, you have mastered an essential speaking skill. Your book quotes Richard Maxwell and Robert Dickman, and they say this: a story is a fact wrapped in an emotion that compels us to take an action that transforms our world. This is the kind of stories that we're talking about. Stories engage an audience. Stories inspire an audience. Stories motivate an audience. A story has an ability to take your thesis and connect it with an emotion that compels your audience to take the action that you desire for them to take. Lots of times when we talk about stories, we talk about narratives. Narratives describe what people are doing or what they have done and why they've done them. It's never just an informative thing. There's always an ethical tie-in. Why? Why does this matter? Why did this happen? Why did they do this? Why does it matter to your audience? So narratives are organized stories that contain plots or sequences of events. They involve characters and agents and themes, and they have outcomes, and they have a purpose, and they have a point. And so that is a good narrative. There are 5 key elements that make a story good. There are 5 key elements that make a story effective. First of all, a good story reflects your passion or sense of purpose. It draws from the inner you. It draws from your inner voice. And it rallies others to participate with you in creating a better future. So a good story draws your audience in and makes them your partner in the pursuit of the solution that you are presenting. Secondly, a good story always has a source of conflict. There has to be a problem. There has to be something or someone that your audience can agree with you is a threat to the future. This is a good story. Good story that's going to help you persuade your audience presents, first of all, an antagonist, a source of conflict, a threat that you're going to help solve. Then a good story also offers up a hero or a protagonist, someone who will conquer that villain, someone who will overcome the problem, someone who will offer a solution. And that solution, that the way that it is overcome has to mirror the solution that you're proposing and what you're asking your audience to do. The audience needs to see themselves, not in the villain, not in the source of the conflict, but in the hero, in the protagonist. They need to see the actions of that hero that overcomes the villain as actions that they can participate in, and they too can conquer the villain that you're presenting to them. So a good story creates an awakening in the hero and in the audience. It's that aha moment when they get it, when they realize that I can do this. I can make the world a better place. I can overcome whatever the villain is, poverty, people who are starving, the people who are underprivileged, whatever it is that I'm appealing to you to help me overcome. Just like the hero overcome the villain, I can help with this. I have something to offer. A good story helps your audience to realize they have something to offer and to be a part of the solution. Then finally, a good story reveals a need for change or an opportunity for transformation. A good story always concludes with some kind of an appeal, bringing your audience into the story and helping them realize these are the steps they can take to be effective, just like the hero of the story was effective. When you tell a joke, timing matters to jokes. If you get to the punchline too soon or too late, you lose your audience. And you've all heard somebody tell a joke that they just really didn't deliver the punchline at the right time and it just ruined it. Storytelling is the same way. Timing matters when you're telling a story. And when you tell the right story at the right moment, at the right time, it's as though your words and actions become that much more powerful. They compel others to respond and follow you, and they open their heart to the directive and the persuasive thing that you're trying to get them to do. It matters where in your speech you tell a story, when you tell it, how you tell it, what the context is, because the story can be incredibly powerful, but if you plug it in at the wrong moment or the wrong place in the speech, you nullify the power of the story. You can actually undermine yourself instead of helping yourself. So you got to be a good storyteller. You got to come up with good stories that tell the story that you want told, that get your audience involved in your solution, that make them realize they can do it, and that reveal to them the need to do it. And you've got to deliver that story at the right time.